You want us to surrender? At least buy us dinner first. The alien warlord's mandibles clicked together in what his species might have considered confusion or fury. Admiral Kresh of the Icar Dominion stood before a massive view screen aboard his flagship, staring down at Earth's delegation. On the other side, representing humanity, was an unshaven man in a wrinkled jumpsuit, leaning back in his chair and sipping from a steaming mug that said, "World's okayest dad." "You fail to grasp the seriousness of your situation," Kresh hissed, his voice rasping through the translator. "Your species has no place in the dominion of the Icar. Surrender your planet and you will be permitted servitude. Resist and you will be eradicated." Yeah, the man yawned, rubbing his stubbled chin. "Real original. Surrender or perish." "Look, we've heard this speech before. It's like the plot of every B-list alien invasion movie we've made." Kresh stiffened. "You mock us?" "Oh, absolutely." There was a snort from somewhere off-screen, followed by muffled laughter. The man gestured vaguely toward the unseen audience. "You see, Admiral Bugface, we did some research on your people. Conquerors, right? No sense of humor, big into hierarchy, military discipline, honor, all that. Thing is, we've been dealing with guys like you for centuries. Well, not literally, but you get the idea. You roll up, act all tough, expect us to kneel. But here's the thing, Kreshi, humans don't do well with ultimatums." Kresh clenched his clawed fists. "Your planet is defenseless. Your crude technology is centuries behind the might of the Icar Dominion. Your vessels are barely armed. Your orbital defenses are laughable." Right, the man nodded, taking another sip of coffee. "And yet, you're still talking." The warlord's mandibles twitched, his irritation growing. "We are offering you mercy, and I'm offering you the chance to not embarrass yourself." The human grinned. "Look, we've got the whole fleet watching, right? All your little generals and admirals, all your warriors. You showed up thinking this was going to be easy. Primitive species, barely in the space age, let's just roll in and take over. But something tells me you didn't expect us." Kresh's clawed hands slammed against the armrest of his chair. "Enough! This is your final warning." A new voice crackled over the comms, cutting him off. "Hey, sorry to interrupt, but we found another one." Kresh turned his head slightly, as if uncertain whether to continue his tirade or address the voice. On the human screen, another man, this one wearing an oil-stained jumpsuit, appeared in a separate window. He was grinning, holding up what looked like a small metallic disc. "Admiral, this is getting ridiculous," the man said. "Your cloaked probes? We've been finding them all over the solar system. You might want to fire your stealth engineers because these things are about as subtle as a neon sign." Kresh froze. "Impossible." "Yeah, that's what we thought at first too," the jumpsuit man said. "Turns out your advanced technology isn't as sophisticated as you think. I mean, these cloaking signals? Please, we've been intercepting them all week. You'd be better off painting your ships bright orange." The first man chuckled. "Oh, and did you guys know that your fleet transmissions aren't encrypted properly? Yeah, our interns cracked them in like an hour. Really disappointing stuff, Kreshi." Kresh's eyes flared. "This is deception, a crude attempt to shake our resolve. No, that would be a waste of time. We're just having fun at your expense." The human leaned forward, setting his mug down. "Look, you seem like a smart guy, so let me explain something. You're not dealing with warriors. You're not dealing with noble soldiers who will fight you to the death over honor and glory. You're dealing with us, a species that spent most of its history figuring out increasingly creative ways to ruin each other's day." Kresh scoffed. "You expect me to believe that humanity, a species that has barely left its homeworld, has any means to challenge the Icar?" The man grinned. "Challenge? No. That's the wrong word. You see, Admiral, we don't fight fair. Never have, never will. We don't engage in glorious battles where two evenly matched sides go at it until one is victorious. We find a way to make you regret ever stepping onto the field in the first place." "Enough!" Kresh rose from his seat, his patience at an end. "If you refuse to surrender, then you will suffer the consequences." The human whistled. "Oh, we're shaking." The screen cut out, and Kresh turned to his bridge officers, their exoskeletal frames stiff with anticipation. He straightened, regaining his composure. Prepare the fleet. We shall begin with their orbital infrastructure. Let them witness the power of the Icar before we reduce their planet to ash. One of his officers hesitated. Sir, if I may, should we not be cautious? They mock us, but perhaps... There is no perhaps. They are insects pretending to be giants. They believe their defiance is strength, but it is only ignorance. We shall strike swiftly, and their arrogance will crumble. Yet deep in the back of Kresh's mind, something nagged at him. The humans, weak as they were entirely too comfortable. No desperate pleading, no false bravado covering fear. Just jokes, mockery, as if they knew something he did not. Kresh watched as the first barrage of plasma fire rained down on Earth's orbital installations. The initial strike was meant to cripple their primitive satellites, cut off their communications, and send a clear message. Within moments, fireballs erupted in the darkness of space, debris scattering into orbit. The fleet officers aboard Kresh's command ship observed in silence, awaiting the expected panic, but there was none. Sir, one of his officers spoke hesitantly, we are not detecting any distress signals from their planetary command. No emergency transmissions, no military responses. Kresh's mandibles tightened. Impossible. Their entire satellite network has been... Actually, a voice cut through the bridge's comms. That was pretty underwhelming. The view screen flickered to life. It was the same human as before, now holding a bag of popcorn. He shook it slightly. We had a bet going on how long it would take you to start shooting. I had my money on immediately after being mocked, so thanks for the payday. Kresh clenched his claws. You continue to treat this as a joke. Oh, absolutely, the human said between bites of popcorn. See, we figured you'd go straight for the shock and awe approach. Real textbook stuff. But I have a question for you, Kreshi. Did you actually check what you were firing at? One of Kresh's officers immediately brought up the tactical display, scanning what remained of Earth's orbital network. Kresh narrowed his eyes as the data scrolled across the screen. Decoys. Thousands of them. What is this? Kresh growled. That? The human grinned. That's what we like to call a massive waste of your ammunition. Oh, and a fun fact, you didn't just hit our decoys. You blew up some of your own probes in the process. Great shooting, by the way. A chorus of quiet clicks rippled through the Icar bridge. Kresh could feel his officers shifting uneasily, the weight of an unseen presence pressing against them. The humans had known. Not only had they anticipated the first strike, they had made a game of it. They're real satellites, one of Kresh's officers muttered, staring at the updated scans, are still fully operational. Kresh's claws flexed against the armrest. You are delaying the inevitable. The human wagged a finger. Nah, see? You're thinking like a conqueror. You're expecting some desperate last stand. But we don't do that. We don't fight fair. The moment you entered the system, we were already at war with you. You just didn't realize it yet. A second human appeared on the screen, this one wearing thick glasses and a smudged lab coat. Hey, so quick update. Your fleet comms? They're a mess. Your encryption? Honestly, it's kind of cute. We figured it out days ago. Kresh turned sharply to his comms officer. Confirm this, now. The Icar scrambled to comply, hands darting over the controls, mandibles twitching. The results came back within moments. Sir, they are intercepting our transmissions. Kresh's vision darkened with fury. Trace their source. The human in the lab coat raised a hand. Oh, don't bother. We're bouncing signals off so many places, you'd have better luck catching smoke with a spear. And speaking of your fleet, you might want to check your logistical reports. One of Kresh's officers frantically pulled up the fleet's supply status. The moment the numbers came through, his posture stiffened. Sir, we are experiencing unexplained supply shortages. Not unexplained, the human said, adjusting his glasses. Sabotaged. You brought enough provisions to sustain a prolonged planetary invasion, right? Fuel, rations, spare parts? Pretty standard. But here's the thing. We've been helping ourselves to those stockpiles for a while now. That is not possible, Kresh snapped. Our security is terrible, the human interrupted. Seriously, your storage facilities are laughably easy to infiltrate. We started small, messing with your inventory logs so it looked like nothing was missing. But over the last few days, well, let's just say your ground teams are going to start noticing their ration packs are mysteriously lighter. Kresh shot a glare toward his officers. Why was this not detected? The officers looked at each other uneasily. One finally spoke. Sir, our reports have been showing accurate counts. That's because we've been feeding you false data, the human said cheerfully. You might want to check those containers you think are full. Another officer quickly pulled up internal surveillance logs. The footage was edited flawlessly. We have been compromised, the officer whispered. The human on screen took another bite of popcorn. So, let's take stock, shall we? You wasted your first strike on decoys. Your fleet comms are wide open. Your logistics are unraveling. Oh, and fun fact, your ship's reactor maintenance cycles? We messed with those too. Kresh's breath hitched. You did what? You'll find out soon enough, the human said, stretching. But hey, I gotta go. We're setting up a big watch party for when you realize how much trouble you're actually in. Should be fun. The screen cut to static. Kresh stood frozen, rage boiling beneath his carapace. The humans had never intended to fight them head-on. Instead, they had let the Icar step into the battlefield completely blind, utterly unprepared. The Icar were not fighting a war. They were walking into a catastrophe. Kresh's claws curled into the armrests of his throne-like command seat. The silence on the bridge was suffocating. His officers, once proud warriors of the Icar Dominion, were now hunched over their consoles, desperately scanning for any sign of control, any possible way to regain an advantage. But the humans had left them none. The situation had spiraled beyond battle tactics. This was humiliation. Every protocol, every strategy the Icar had honed over centuries of conquest had been turned against them before a single real shot had even landed on Earth. Status report, Kresh growled. One of his officers swallowed hard. Sir, reports from our fleet indicate unexplained malfunctions. Energy outputs are fluctuating. Primary weapon systems are, he hesitated, unresponsive. Kresh's mandibles clicked sharply. Elaborate, the officer winced. Sir, multiple vessels are reporting power drain in their weapons. Some ships cannot fire at all. Engineers are identifying it as a cascading system failure. Their reactors are cycling at dangerous levels and a tremor ran through the ship. The lights flickered. Kresh heard the crackling of failing circuits. A panicked voice came over the comms. Admiral, ship-wide failures are increasing. The reactor shielding. It's been compromised. Kresh slammed his fist against the console. How? The answer came before his officers could respond. The human returned to the view screen, still in his chair, still as relaxed as ever. Hey, so you guys are figuring out the reactor thing. Took you long enough? Kresh forced himself to breathe steadily. Explain. The human grinned. See, we realized pretty early on that fighting you head-on was a bad idea. You're stronger than us, better armed, bigger fleet. But there's one thing we knew you'd never account for. Kresh narrowed his eyes. The human spread his arms. Bored engineers. Kresh blinked. What? Yeah, the human continued. Turns out when you give a bunch of nerds access to alien tech, tell them, hey, these guys want to conquer us, and then just let them loose, they get real creative. We didn't just hack your comms. We didn't just mess with your supplies. We figured out how to break your ships from the inside out. Another tremor rocked the bridge. Kresh gritted his mandibles. You are bluffing. The human shook his head. Nah, you've already seen it. Your reactors? The maintenance cycle disruptions we mentioned? We found a tiny little bug in your power regulation systems. Then we made some adjustments. Kresh's claws twitched. You tampered with Icar reactor systems? Big time, the human said. See, your ships are powerful, sure, but they're also way too reliant on automation. Your engineers don't double-check things. They just assume the system does what it's supposed to. So we tricked your ships into thinking their reactors were running at normal output while actually pushing them toward catastrophic failure. The longer you sit here, the worse it's going to get. Right now, your fleet's a ticking time bomb. Kresh's breath was slow and measured. You would doom your entire planet just to mock us? The human chuckled. That's cute. You still think this is about honor? He leaned forward. Kresh, we don't do honor wars. We don't care about who's stronger or braver or more worthy. We care about who's left standing. And you? You're already done. You just haven't accepted it yet. Kresh refused to believe it. You think we will flee? No, the human said, standing up. We think you can't. As if in response, another explosion rocked the fleet. Reports flooded in. Entire ships shutting down, reactors failing, crews being evacuated into the void as emergency protocols collapsed. Kresh looked at his officers. They stared back, eyes wide with realization. There was no battle to fight, no enemy to crush. Just a slow, creeping inevitability of their own destruction. A lesser warrior might have raged, fought to the bitter end, clawing at a lost cause. But Kresh was not lesser. He knew what had to be done. Order the retreat, he said, voice heavy. Now. His officers hesitated, waiting for some alternative, some path to salvage their pride. There was none. One by one, they turned to their consoles and obeyed. The Icar fleet turned away from Earth, battered not by weapons, but by something far worse. Ridicule, humiliation, and the inescapable knowledge that they had been utterly defeated before they had even begun. On the human side of the transmission, the crew erupted in cheers. Well, the human commander said, picking up his coffee mug again. That went well.